Well, hello everyone, and here we are again with another close encounter. And today we have, of course, every time I say that we have a very special guest, but this time she's very special to me because she does something with her breath work that's really means a lot to me. And so, but she'll explain that herself later on in the interview. So tonight, oh no, today we give the word to Joanne Lowell, who has been a member for a long, long time of the International Breathwork Foundation. So Joanne, just introduce yourself just a little bit.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you, ladies, after the win of Italy on the.
Yay! Forza Italia!
I'm joining you from Canada, over in Western Canada, and I have been a breath worker for 25 years. And what more can you say? The breath is just this amazing, magical thing. And yes, I've been a member of the IBF for, I think, 21 of those 25 years. And I love the work that we're all doing. And thank you for having me today as your guest.
It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure. And I know that you've been working in the IBF in different capacities. I also know you've organized a jig once. And you've been into breath work since, I'm going to say, forever. So let me get into my first question, Joanne. How do you start a breathwork session? And it's a question I haven't asked anybody until now. We always get into the, more academic stuff, how did breathwork find you? But can you first answer to me, how do you start this breathwork session? Do you have a ritual? Is it a game? Is it an energizer? What do you do to get to people in your circle ready for breathing and the breath?
So I start, whether it's a session or a circle, in the way that we start any kind of a ceremony here in Canada. The first thing we do is we acknowledge the land that we're on. So right now I want to acknowledge I am on the unceded territory of the Indigenous people, the Sinaics people. And the land and the air and the breath that we enjoy is a big part of the legacy of what our Indigenous ancestors and brothers and sisters have held for us. Then if it's an individual session with breath work, or if it's a circle, I always make an altar. And in that altar, I have the four elements, something, water represented, fire represented, earth represented, and air. And then usually something in the center that represents us as the human journey. Because as we know that we have this incredible spirit that moves through us. That's such an amazing thing. And it's kind of, ancient and eternal. And then plop, we've landed into this human body, visceral, physical experience that includes all those elements. And so there's something about calling in the elements, calling in the directions, acknowledging the land as part of acknowledging us as humans being in a body. And it's a good place to start.
That sounds amazing. Remind me to do a breathwork session with you next time we're together in a jig.
I remember the first time I saw you. I think it was in India. Were you in India? That was my first jig. And I saw Joanne coming, Maria, and I was like, this is the very godmother who's coming.
Absolutely.
She's here. She has arrived. Yes. She came from outer space. And
I recognize what you're saying, Lilian. The first time I saw Joanne in Ireland, and she also takes you in like this big mama, she makes you feel part of the family. She absolutely does.
Yeah. Girls to hug you too.
You do breast work. We'll get to that later, to the breathwork sessions. But besides the breathwork, what inspires you, Joanne? What gets you? Because 25 years ago it started, but how did it get to you? What inspires you to keep up this wonderful work?
How did it find you?
How did
breathwork find you and grab you and catch you?
That's an interesting story. And then I'll tell you what inspires me after that. So I got into breathwork through architecture.
Wow.
total sense, right?
Very
Of
obvious.
course, building a building.
So I was an architectural student, 2% women among all men, and my architectural thesis was the place of birth. Where do we give birth? And
Wow.
I ended up traveling around the entire world to all these different countries and interviewing people of their birth cultures. And I attended my first birth in Amsterdam, where you are, Lillian. Yes.
That's
Yay.
amazing.
Initially, so there I am with my papers and my pen or pencils, and I'm drawing the environment. The woman who's birthing is like 20 feet across from me in the room. And after 5 minutes, it's like, throw these things down. And something in me just knew to keep eye contact with her and to breathe every breath that she had as an inhale and every exhale with her, in unison with her.
Mm.
Over the course of a night, maybe 15 hours, I breathed every breath with her. Oh, I get goosebumps again, just saying this.
Mm.
And something inside of me was like remembering that I know how to do this, and not even birthing, but I know how to be with someone
Mhm.
through that huge transition. And in fact, then when the baby was just about to be birthed, the baby said, "Daddy, Daddy, I'm coming." And I could hear the baby's voice, and the dad was off doing something. And so I had telepathically said, "Your son is coming." And then the babe was born, and it was all beautiful. And when we left, I was thanking the mother, and she looked at me and took me by the hands, and she said, "Thank you so much." And I didn't have any words for what was going on. But anyway, then back to Canada I get, and I finished my thesis. It was not accepted. It was ahead of its time. And that's a whole other story. I end up in Yellowknife in the Arctic, and I'm pregnant now, taking my research very seriously. And I know so much about midwifery and birth by this time. And my midwife, we have an evening with the midwife, and it's meet with a midwife, and I answer questions too. And afterwards, my midwife says, "You could be a childbirth consultant." So from that point on, I started to support women for their choices in birth, which eventually they asked me to be present at their births. And so then I started to be a birth attendant. And so that carried on for several years. Then I moved down to British Columbia here in Canada. And I kid you not, I got to Nelson, BC, where I live and where the 2006 Global Inspiration Conference was. And I'm kind of wondering what's next for me. And I'm in a bookstore, and literally, boom, Sandra Ray's book into my hands. I haven't been here 1 week, and I get invited into something called Life Shift, which is a 10-day retreat of breathwork. And if you want to train to become a breathworker, you have to do that personally first, and then you come and you come and come. And so within 10 days, I was in a breathwork training. and then the rest is history, you start to have your clients and you start to do circles. And then let's see, that was 2006. And then 2000, I think, was the first Global Inspiration Conference that I came to, and I love it. I just feel like, the breath is with us all the time in all these beautiful ways. And, if it wants to find you, it will find you, and it will really hit you on the head with a book.
Oh, great
Absolutely.
story.
Thanks for sharing, Joanne.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, and then you promised to tell us what inspires you, and I got a hunch what's inspiring you. So don't keep us waiting. So share with us what's so inspiring for you.
What inspires me in probably almost everything I do, and again, particularly with breathwork, is the children.
Mm.
That we have this crazy world we're living in, and crazy times of change, and the kids are just so open And because I'm a birth attendant, I'm seeing the caliber of the souls coming in. These are amazing beings coming in. And I look to the children as almost like being teachers. And this is true always, because they're in the present moment. They're right here. They bang their foot, they cry, they scream. They don't like what you like. They express it. They don't hold it in the way we adults do it. And out of that, many who are watching this will know is came the inspiration to create the conscious breathing in the classroom, where we as breath workers, when we started that, we saw ourselves as being the ones going into the classrooms and teaching breath. But in fact, we came to realize that the best way to really change the world is to teach the teachers, teach the parents, and then teach the kids to help to lead themselves with conscious breathing. And again, taking it back a notch from the therapeutic aspect of breath work, and taking it back a notch to having breathing practices for everyday life situations. And the kids are just amazing. And what we find is when we teach the kids to breathe consciously through their teachers in schools and other settings with teachers, they come home and they say to their mom, take a breath. You need to extend your you know, they'll start to breathe their other siblings, you know. And the kids are just so amazing. And yeah, they inspire me every day. And it's the same thing with other aspects of my life. I just love the kids so much, and they just they're so open to ritual. They're so open to circle. They're so open to breath. They're so open to feeling. They're so open to exploration. And you just make it a game, or you make it fun. And the other part is, this has been my whole life, is that, you know how often we as adults can talk down to kids? They can tell when we're doing that. And I've never done that. I've always talked to anyone, even a newborn baby, as if this fully formed soul is in front of me. So even when a baby's crying quite a lot, I'll say, you have a lot to say. What is it you're saying? I want to hear what you're saying. You know, that there is a lot that comes out of kids that is so wise, and to be to them with dignity and respect, you know.
And it totally resonates what you're saying, Joanne, with me as a teacher. You know, every day there's children struggling with stress, and my go-to advice is look up some breathing exercises. There's so many apps you can use. You know, they have to stand in front of a jury or do oral exams, and you know, and to get that mainstream, just, you know, as a habit, as good practice. It's not always easy. Sometimes I have to fight like this skepticism and people who think that, you know, I'm floating up there. But once they're in there and they're doing the breathing, you know, it's something they have for life, you know. And I do deal with older children. I have teenagers 16 years and older. But what you said about talking down to them is also something that frustrates me, the way that in our society we want to pamper and help children, whereas you're taking away so much from them because they have so much strength and resilience. And, you know, sometimes it's good to make them do their mistakes, get up, be strong, and you're helping them more that way than, you know, doing it for them. And I think it's a very important thing you just said. Yeah. Thanks for that. It's a great message.
Well, and also too, just the difference between, there can be formal exercises that can be brought in, or a certain time of the day, but there's also just like entrainment. Like I could be at a birth and we're having a beautiful time, it's in the hospital, everything's fine, and in walks the obstetrician, and he's looking like he's ready to get his knives out or something, like he's not there. And I'll notice him, so I'll go and stand beside that him or her, and I'll just start doing this. Second time. By the third time, that obstetrician is breathing with me. Suddenly that person will look around and go, oh, it's very beautiful in here. There's lovely music playing. Oh, everything feels really fun.
Yeah.
And
That's how powerful the breath is, you know. That's how powerful our instrument is. And if we learn to work with it or to be aware, I mean, that's where it all starts, to bring the awareness back to the breath. And if you start with the youngsters, for me, like I work in the Netherlands at the kindergartens. I teach the I don't know the word pedagogisch medewerkers in English, you know,
that's quite
pedagogisch,
a mouthful.
no, the kindergarten teachers, with the small children. So it's really rewarding, because when they say, "Oh my God, I never knew that about the breath," just to check in with your breath, and then you feel, oh, so okay, now look at the children. What do they do when they have emotions? And it's like it's so rewarding to bring the work into the field. And so I'm very grateful for you and your group that you've brought this into the IBF and actually into the Netherlands. So thank you very, very much again. And
And,
so, yeah.
and in fact, yes, you bring up another interesting point, is that when we start with the kids young, they learn to self-regulate.
Mm.
And I'm 64 years old, recognizing that I don't always know how to regulate my trauma responses, and I have to learn those things. And it's like, what if we started just to say it's normal to have this response? It's normal to have these feelings.
Acknowledging
now-
them. Yeah.
Bring yourself back into safety. And actually bringing this kind of full circle around some of the things that I do is I also work with parents with their kids around the birth imprints that those kids had coming in. And out of our birth imprints can be some birth trauma. Not a problem. Usually it's part of our gifts and our lessons. And so once we kind of know what a certain birth imprint was, let's say a child was a C-section. And so oftentimes the way they may relate in life is they didn't get all the stages of labor and birth. And so they may not understand doing things in a step-by-step way. They start at step 1 and they want to be at step 10. And so we'll work with these affirmations and this breath and so on. And with the parents, they'll whisper to the child just as they're falling asleep. They'll have a little bit of breathing with them, and then they'll whisper, I know I can do things step by step. I am safe. I am worthy. I am good. I am loved. And so it's like we can also like work with those birth imprints. And by the way, back to that obstetrician, I could tell you their birth imprint, they nearly died and they have to be a savior. And so,
wow.
so I know that at a birth, I know that everybody's birth trauma comes up. So it's a fact, it's not a problem. So just in the moment, you can't start processing somebody in a therapeutic way, but you can always breathe.
Yeah. Okay,
That's
Joanne, because we can talk this for hours. Maybe we can have a separate session with you, with especially about birth. And but we have to think about the time. And what I want to ask you, and I just really wonder if you look at the future of the IBF or at breathwork, what kind of magical stuff do you see happening, or what's your wish for the breath and for IBF especially, for our organization?
Yeah, well, my dream for the IBF is, I think we're living it. I think we're living it right now. That, back in 2005, when we had the jig in Russia, I led a visioning exercise to exactly that question, where, it's 50 years in the future. Where are you? Who are you with? What do you smell? What do you taste? Who's there? What's happening? And at that point, our family, our IBF family, could see the jig, the Global Inspiration Conference. No one could see past that except Natalia and I. And so I actually saw breathing with children and a science group and all those other things, but it just wasn't where our consciousness was at. So I did the same process in 2013 in India, your first one there, Lillian. And we did a visioning exercise, and we were ready to step off into all these new ways of working together as volunteers. So we're bringing breathwork, conscious breathing into schools and into refugee camps There's a science group that has research and so on. We now have the arts. We now have online. We have resources. And then those of us who are work group leaders, we have a council. So we're all containers within the containers of being held. And
Yeah.
the most exciting thing that I love in what we're doing is that we're going beyond just what is our individual practices of breath work in circles and clients and trainings, and we're recognizing conscious breathing as a way forward into the world.
Yeah.
And I couldn't go on without mentioning our UN group, where we've actually we brought the conscious breathing in the classroom to the United Nations. And initially it was a hard sell, because normally I'm in breathwork circles and people understand, and people didn't understand.
Yeah.
And so I had that same example of 3 breaths with a border guard going into the US who was going to pull a gun on me.
What is she doing?
Breaths with that person and de-escalated the situation. And suddenly we had 800 people's lives that we touched in 2-3 days.
Wow.
And that's what excites me so much about the potential of what we're doing and potential for the world, and that it's all right here, right under our nose. It's for free. And if we just know that that next breath is going to hold the key to unlock that argument and to open up that inspiration and to come into the science and to make it's accessible, and it's here every day.
Exactly.
And here we are, and we're doing it. So we're living the dream, and I'm so proud. And I couldn't say this without saying also that we are family, family of IBFers, and I love you guys, and I missed you these last couple of years, but it's like we meet up and be real in who we are, and then we go and have these adventures all over the planet. And who would have thought that when I came to my first jig in 2000, that here we'd be 21 years later, and I'll be a crickety old lady.
Still breathing.
I'll still be breathing with you.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Joanne.
Thank you for sharing. I want to say in closing that, you know, what your words just triggered in me was that we're actually all ambassadors of the breath. We don't need the formal title in our day-to-day practice, and who we meet and what we tell people, and if we include them in our stories and in this IBF family. I think that is very important in our day-to-day lives, to keep spreading the word. In class, you, me, Lillian, you know, we're with the children. So I think it's vital that we keep spreading the message. Thank you very much, Joanne.
Thank you, Joanne. And so this was another episode of Close Encounters, and we'll see you next time with another special guest from IBF. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.